Our first up is Raquel Abend Van Dalen. In 2014, she received her MFA in creative writing in Spanish from New York University. In 2016, she was a resident writer in the program for artists at the Camac Centre d'Art in France. She's the author of the novels Cuarto Azul and Andor, and the author of poetry books Sobre las Fábricas, una Trinidad, oh, I'm not going to butcher that, and La Beata de las Locas. She recently published a book of short stories, and her work has been included in several anthologies. Raquel is currently pursuing a PhD in creative writing in Spanish and art history at the University of Houston. Please welcome Raquel Abend Van Dalen.
Thank you, Leila. You did great with the Spanish titles. Thank you so much to Public Poetry and to the library and Fran, and also Miranda, who invited me to be here with you today. So I'm going to be reading a series of poems that belong to the poetry book La Beata de las Locas, but this translation into English was made by my good friend Dillon Scalzo, so I'm going to be able to read it in English. The poems doesn't have any title, so I will just read one after the other. Oh, the title in English of the book would be Beatified Among the Insane. We relish the rage of not touching you, the mistiming of a zone with no use, leaving us more alone, like a slow accident of water, about to annihilate the origin from this repeated story, a door for its chimerical transformation among the blind and the insane. Fingers wave the white net from the inside out, the flesh just served, fresh from an animal that doesn't die. Its surrender is silent, not knowing how to howl in any language. The flies suck the inflamed cornea. Involuntarily, the itch circulates. How much devotion? What can I offer? Perhaps the teeth that have been born, a thread that scars my departure. Who would we be if we didn't look for salvation at the end of the night? If the phobias disguised as birds didn't fall asleep in our legs? If we didn't wake naked in a room whose light emanates from the altar? I beg you take me again, where I know how to name what I touch, and everything is a bird with tense wings that waits, so as not to frighten you. This is how miserable glory tastes, like contradiction and fruit and wound. We suspend the zeal without beginning and arrive to that forest, patient, where doves and snakes devour one another to save ourselves within this life. We sing from an absurd scenography. Everything occurs in the night shifts when the effect of the light falls and the drunk follows the hymn. Inside and outside the houses, it's the same. Inside and outside the tombs of Quitch is the same. Inside and outside the uterus. Your shots respond through us, the dialogue of the poor listener. The heroines without diplomas circle on tiptoes, hushed not to wake anyone. They teach us to wash things well, to not leave evidence. We are the plague that occupies the corners taken from this world. Thank you.
Thank you. That's lovely. All right. Our next featured poet is Justin Janice. He is the author of How to Be Better by Being Worse, which won the A. Poulin Jr. Poetry Prize and is out from BOA Editions Limited. His poems have appeared in Best New Poets, Best of the Net, Copper Nickel, Yale Review, and the New Ohio Review. He's a recent recipient of the Imprint Verlaine Prize in Poetry and editor-in-chief of Gulf Coast. Justin Janice is pursuing his PhD at the University of Houston. Please welcome Justin Janice.
Hi, it's so good to be here to see some familiar faces and or familiar names. And I lived in Houston in 2009, 2010, where I don't think there was public poetry. And then I left and I came back and it's just blossomed. And I'm just proud to live in a city where there's so many opportunities for creative writers to be involved in the community. And I'm gonna read some poems from the book later, but I'm gonna start with some new stuff. And this one's called, this was one that's set in Houston. It's called Morning. Just a little smoke gray sky I see as the coffee pot gurgles and spits. My sister used to get things most wrong in the morning. I gotta have my caffeine to wake up, she'd say, while crushing an emerald can of Sprite. Once at dawn, she asked, "Why's that dog crowing like a rooster?" Now her two young children wake up on their own to feed and dress themselves. I wonder what kinds of things they say to one another as I open the door to red buds in full bloom, though many buds have dropped, and bees, which I thought had fled me. How is it possible that in a few hours the whole city will shake with thunderous rain, too much, too fast? Children will march single file through hallway rivers, Captain America lunch kits and My Little Pony backpacks over their heads. I won't just sleep. I will get the best sleep in months. The rain, my babysitter, the rain, my lullaby. I'll wake late in the afternoon and set out on foot, pausing to allow a Ford Explorer to cross, but it won't move. Floorboard flooded, abandoned. In 5 blocks, there'll be a dozen more just like it. This next poem is called How Long Have You Gone Without Seeing a Tree? When my brother calls, there's a lull in conversation, a deafening roar at times. I ask my brother if he can hear cicadas where he is. My brother doesn't know what cicadas are. He is 40 years old. He asked me to repeat it. Cicadas. What? Cicadas. What are you saying? The connection is bad. I do my best to spell it. Cicadas. Cicadas. My brother reads the books I send him, books of all sorts. Some very good, very smart books. Others just books. Oh, my brother says. He didn't know it was pronounced that way. He knows the word by sight only. He doesn't know what cicadas sound like. They live in trees, I tell him. We don't have trees, my brother says. I've been to Huntsville. There are trees there. Not near me, he says. Trees, really, where a man can hide? Have you tried to explain to a man who's never heard cicadas what a cicada is? A cicada. Is there ever just one? How long have you gone without seeing a tree? After 17 years, his release date is set. The call drops. For a moment, I hang on the line. The sound it makes is a plane flying low. This one is actually set in Galveston. So waving to you, friend, Galveston. I love Galveston. It's called, it's called Missing You Expensively. Too much has been made of the market for keepsakes, urns, watches, tchotchkes, memento mori, and too little, I think, of the market for forgetting. May I be brief? Just today, a latte, a bottle, a gram, a carton of eggs that I dropped and left in the parking lot, Operation Omelet aborted. Oh, and the small fortune I paid for a sleeper sofa because the one I have now just won't shut up. And now we have humankind needs larger birds. Humankind needs larger birds. Red-tailed hawks scaled up to pterodactyl proportions, 12-story great white egrets, spear-sharp bills puncturing our roofs like giant stilettos, a helicopter hummingbird or two always hovering, thirsty for us to make just one wrong move. We need more natural predators to humble us into greater regret, more meaningful action. We share too little of the terrestrial burden that camels, mules, and antelope bear. Let the crow outgrow our bomber planes. Let the great horned owl outsmart us. And let them be as we are, locked doors unto themselves, their hearts grand ballrooms of sinew and mystery, their brains locomotive engines of synapse and being their own worst enemy. Thank you.
Thank you. Loved it. All right. So our next featured poet is Anis Shivani. His poetry books include Soraya, Sonnets, My Tranquil War, Whatever Speaks on Behalf of Hashish, The Moon Blooms in Occupied Hours, and most recently, Logography. Logography, a poetry omnibus. His poetry appears in the Threepenny Review, Boston Review, Prairie Schooner, and many other journals. He is a Pushcart Prize winner and has published many books of fiction and criticism as well. Please welcome Anis Shivani.
Thank you, Leela. Thank you, Leela. Thank you, Fran. Thanks everyone involved in public poetry. Thanks to Houston Public Library for doing this. It's been too long. So I'm going to read from this book that you just mentioned, Logography, which is my most recent poetry book from Sagging Meniscus Press. If you are interested in ordering, you can just go to their website, Sagging Meniscus Press, go to Amazon, anywhere else you'd like. So this book came out just before the shutdown of the pandemic, so I wasn't really able to do much with it. So I'm grateful for this opportunity today. So it actually is 3 books in one, Confessions to Lyric Resistance and The Art of Love. And the middle book, Lyric Resistance, which is an homage to Paul Celan. That's the one I'm going to read poems from in both segments. So Logography, Lyric Resistance. This body, like the corpus of private law, takes a seat in the proa, fluttering like Sagittarius. Had I been sterilized at an early age, I would have had a conscious mind. I mean, in the sense of the tears of Job, who was in league with conspicuous writing. Day and night, I remember the quality of flash welding, which is the worm coming home to live among the intoxicants. Some years ago, I wrote about dreams. The first family satisfied with God and wanting the narrator to rely on parasites. Some years ago, I ate up the subject of dreams like tyranny at very low frequency, my true dialect. The vast Indian subcontinent is a diagram of layaway myths. First, the resolution of the Miocene age, then minutiae, varieties of short-sleeved fruit, the pink of your tears, then tea time under trees. They knew about tuning forks 1,000 years ago in the age of musk. In their medicine cabinets, you find the hinges to mother's milk. The mosque, interminate, flattery's liturgic mask, where we stand like problems, but mellow, melded to each other's surface oddities in a packed assembly, shoulder to shoulder, oily hearts melting. Among the neo-paganists who all preferred a temperate climate, such as in Los Angeles before the tanager satin. But we dig in your satchel and find the exclamations of horror. You have aged anyway. Those are the ground rules. Your skin, saline and vibrating, has turned into a baboon's silvery gray cape and a naked red face. Cutting their hamstrings, the neo-paganists found that light curves in the lumberyard quite like child psychiatry. Of the part that is Muslim in me, left behind by megaspores and subdivisions of class, you know only the monotonous concentration. A most respectable profession is body snatching. Bog trotter, who loves vultures, repeats to them, let's hope, let's hope, let's hope. Each language frames the same idea differently. It's not just to do with words, but the way agents are executed after trial. Phobias are flattened thousands of times. The insupportable carries over into prophecy. If you knew of my Khartoum insurrection, though I am a glass jar with layers of pale foil on the outside, not quite like a ski that has fallen off. In another language, this would perhaps be incense that tears the heart muscle. Time invested in a section of this book, Noman telling me I could have been highborn behind the beam, a knowing smile, instead of strolling in inferior chords like a mandala to wheelchairs. Snowed in, dear foxhole in the four-star city, Frambesia in the bricks and tiles encampment does not have the odor of the neckline empire builder. It is the leap year again. At the snowy park, I stumble upon memento mori, nude stockings pointed in the right direction, the ash of a person who was a bore and a language all unto himself. The old man, caramel dipped in tutti, maneuvering around predatory ground beetles, his eyes a caravan of trucks. Looking out over the sea, the vapor concurs. To where eye-bright, marshy, flat-footed engines hijacked. Extremists plot his touristic demise. The old man, logos of the one index word. And the last one. I exercise my horse of classical music, lighting the lamp along the edge of another domino. The evening, Maghrib, is a sea journey centered on the midget submarine. My friends of uranium burn me as a counter-irritant. We talk about moving the piece on the board game. I would not know the fresh notes of bergamot for many more quatrains. The crows scream, Holy Roman Emperor, trawl net, and the oud sounds from a close distance, Osman, Osman, accept her offer, sleep with her under the language of your people.
First, please welcome back Raquel Abend van Dalen.
Thank you. I will read two more poems from the same book, and then another one from another book. So this one has no title. The matryoshkas hide like animal eggs, the drool inside the body, the woman inside the woman, makes holes, spaces for grief. Once again, the danger of being born, groaning in the face of the woman that concealed you from the world until breaking that desire of darkness. This is how we are when we don't return. Everything multiplies in a place no one knows. We stop deserving the excesses. Something whistles between the offerings of an obscure devotion. Who said that we're born alone, born of no one? And now I'm gonna read from another book. The title in the English would be something like, We the Pigs Are Beautiful. The title is About the Rothko Chapel. When you go to Houston for the first time, people ask you if you already went to the Rothko Chapel, as if it was Cinderella's castle or Lady Liberty. The Passover go and collect 200 at the Tejana City. A Far West for those who live in New York, a glorified Miami for those who live in Florida, a hidden gem in the oil gravities. People ask you, what do you think of the Rothko Chapel? And before you can answer, they tell you, it's beautiful, isn't it? A beauty. And they continue naming a list of places to visit, to be part of a sacred ritual, saying, the most beautiful thing about Houston is the diversity, and the city's not that hot. Others seem to be disappointed. It's not a big deal, better go to the Byzantine Chapel. So I stayed paralyzed with the burial painting in my mouth. Those purple and premonitory stones collapsed like the holy wafer between my teeth, my tongue rinsed by an animal's black blood. People push me to the sacristy with no Christ, to the altar of the thousand gods with no religion. Nobody really wants to hear what you think about the Rothko Chapel. When your family comes to visit Houston, you shall take them to the Rothko Chapel, as if it was the anniversary of a loss you share, to place some flowers and clean dried leaves found laying on the ground. My mother didn't want to sit on the benches. She put her hands on her mouth, petrified in the silence imposed by the 4 guards, gargoyle eyes hidden inside holes in the walls. She asked me which work seemed more black to me, and I pointed out on the imposing trinity to my right, then which one was more red and blue and grayer. We hugged each other as if we had forgiven each other something unresolved from the past, and we left. When my dad came in, he said something very loud to me, pointing out the darkness with his left hand, the other one holding a solid wood cane. One of the statues tried to hush him from a distant chair, but my dad didn't listen and kept on howling and waving the cane, protesting so loudly that I couldn't understand what he was saying. The guard approached us and placed her forefinger on her lips, like she was shutting up a child. My dad looked offended and repeated in a lower voice, "Do you sit backwards?" So he walked to another bench, sat with his legs in the opposite direction, and he remained silent, looking at his crushed hands. "What a sad place," he said when we came to light. "I feel very sad." Thank you.
Thank you. That was very moving. Our next featured poet is Justin Janice.
Thank you. And I'm just, what a delight and a privilege to be hearing these poems from, am I on mute? No, okay. I always feel like it gets quiet and then it's like, wait, am I just saying all this? Okay, yeah. No, for Raquel and Anise and then y'all in the open mic, I mean, I'm very impressed and just great to be here. And I just want to give a shout out to Miranda. I left you off earlier. Thank you for always being such a great advocate for my work and my book. And I'm actually going to read the last poem in my book, How to Be Better by Being Worse. It's called Booked, and it was first published by Public Poetry. I think it was a finalist for one of the contests that they published it. Booked. I almost slipped, not on a banana peel, but on a banana peeled, naked, just the sweet, soft, easily edible part, lying there on the sidewalk, the inverse of a joke. We all have days when the door that should be unlocked won't open. Nothing under the welcome mat but crushed red leaves and cockroach limbs. Voices from the vestibule carry scraps of a heated argument in from the cold. We've been through this. Be honest, not surprised. I took an alternate route to work and saw a barn with a landscape painted on its side. I saw 1, 2, 3 bald pumpkins in a field before the word caught up and erased them into a patch. I skimmed a few pills from the child-proof bottle and dropped them like glittery slivers of flint along my way out. I'm never going back. My 3-pronged cord wouldn't take to the dual outlets of that house. My friend, the masseuse, hurries to work this morning, believing herself booked. Her first appointment doesn't show. The second calls to cancel. The third shows up an hour late. Apologies. It's the strangest thing, but on his way, he got rear-ended and the crick in his neck disappeared. Like that, he snaps and drops a 20 into her unused hands. As the time for her 4th appointment draws nearer, she weighs the odds. They lean towards rockets launching into the steadfast ground. This is called a Head in the Sand. I guess I'm in like a beach mood because I keep going to these poems that are sort of on an island or on the beach. Head in the sand, tempting to cling to some certainty, this memory, that fact about peaches, and not retract in the face of certain dirt. Possible to remain inured to the funneling away of fuel, the always nearly empty gauge, despite such frequent sojourns to the pump. Tough to worship the book's closure and remain readerly. Tougher to hug the mystery as close to the chest as a lung, or to know how your tongue tastes. Tougher still to go through with the burial when the coast is eroding and the forecasts say rain every day. And I'll end with one newish poem, Murmuration. To feel like a large flock of starlings in Denmark where it all started, and not just one starling following the flock, but a porous, choreographed cloud ripping and folding against a current of air, a shapeless mass of bone and feather, tuned to its need to appear 1,000 times larger than its closest threat, a hawk, a keen, patient hawk, starving for starling tartare, starling flambe, the blood of a straggling starling, its wing wounded, barely keeping up. Just as the flock is all ruse, all defense, having no other purpose but to keep the most vulnerable parts of itself alive, so too must we. I mean we in the sense of each, not we as the flock, too much baggage there. We must be willing to let a pure instinctual voice, really quieter than a voice, throatier, like a hum, propel us, our manifold songs and desires towards some direction. That way, perhaps, where it is darker, because we have grown so large and focused now that we are blocking out the sun. Now what to do? Now that we are the cloud of our own judgment plaguing the earth, a portent of awful things, what to do except split ourselves down the middle, like dancers in a long hall, and open up a seam in the brilliant pink sky, and then to divide and divide again, kaleidoscopic, free, finally, of the unctuous demands of holding it all together. To let go of each bond, to put it down like a heavy rock carried for a long time, and at last to be light and effervescent, one bird in one body of a bird, like the hawk we thought we scared away. There is time left to enjoy, and why spend it all balled up and nervous? Feast on juniper berries, fly in the fading light. I shouldn't have made such a habit of protecting myself during those long days when everyone else my age was learning how to touch. It's kind of you to deny it, but I know I fell behind, and it's been, well, tough to try and catch up, to hear my body's internal music. What was it my mother said when it finally came time to decide how we would acknowledge each other? I never taught you to go around apologizing for yourself. There is the truth you hold private and the truth you need another to say aloud. And then there is the truth that bears repeating every day of your life. I give you permission to find another flock. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to harm you, but if it harms you, forget it. I never taught you to go around apologizing for yourself. Other mothers raised darlings. I raised a hawk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. All right. Our third and final featured poet for today is Anis Shivani.
Supposed to unmute, which I just did. It should be logography, Leela, but we can go with logography. Why not? So when the book was about to be published, I suggested scores of titles, words from the book to my publisher, Jacob Smulyan, and this is the one we went for, logography, a real tongue twister, because we like difficult. He does, and so do I. We don't like easy. So thanks again to everyone who's joined in. It was a pleasure to listen to my fellow poets, Raquel. I live less than a mile from Rothko Chapel. Happy to listen to Justin for the first time and all the open mic readers. So this is again poems from Lyric Resistance, which is part of the logography book. What is the minimal pair? Below the mother figure, below even nursery rhymes and undergarments and butterfly and tinny. In black and white spiral motifs, the language I was taught in the plush chair timeout sounds to me now as though it is long, slender leaves missing the female parent. The sick Muslims suffer from mosquito bites. Before prayer, a smoke that repels new romantic music. Female journalists form a nucleus of black shoes. The bombs are timed to precision to let them catch up on their sleep. If this is a lament born of latex, if this is an animal born bald, if this is your white crowned head, then what about the silk thread of evil? When you leave your Egyptian black country, your dreams change. They no longer, let's hope so, huh? Have weak teeth or saw-like projections. Your dreams used to be what they call eidetic, hieroglyphs of Sotheby's descent, egg-shaped cocoons, unrestrained, igneous, heartfelt effusions of trust. Now your dreams are fruits flowing out of body cavities. They are the effigies of the liquids of ovular moldings. You must swallow birds' eggs and every night spit them out. Midweek, a heavyweight throws rows of light at dunghill panoramas in an emotional crisis opened up by popular song. We are linguistically Indian Pesa oils by spraying. Come mate with turtle architecture, mate with Rael, mate with the Peace River, mate with paying guests. An article pawned the fruit of this neutrophil tree, many species of the pink of health, to which the pineal eye adds a pinch of salt when crushed. We will bury under musique concrète processions of the caricature of the normal self. My wound that turns liquid when the printer can't cope with breath text. Cynosure of all eyes, when you stepped into my do-si-do room, I was no longer a grandson of fruit in larval stages. I was fuchsia, feeling upset at costing so little. I was a large gold refinery. At the moshav, covered with moss, I rested with the farmers. One said teacher shortages will render the curriculum invalid. Another thought the photograph was a prod to destroy paraffin oil. Yet another knew the setback was termite eating in the way of the heads of comets. I smoked the wedge of cold air suddenly blowing in from the octopus intervals. I crossed the street. At this period of time, the passing seconds were like penicillin, little magicians who had fled imprisonment. I mended quill pens. The blue mold, very poor, equal to 1/100th of a paintbrush, put me to mint sleep. The flying saucers were professionally engaged by clerks and authors of the time as hard alloy rods, as pendulums of the clues of sails, ringing in our ears as graphite forecasts. Penmanship, the antennae of my proud grandma, the underparts of her large etiquette in the legal idiom. I was proud of her incisors and Mongolian neck. And the last one, 13 quatrains at a fountain. The 1970s were a Romantic language, a nose with a high bridge, a civil law in many countries even today. We who captured Tobruk stuffed ourselves with jam. Rome, winter sports center, was not built in a day, nor in a verbal attack of pelvic structures resembling lizards. Alcohol, day of Saturn, occupies the gastronomes every second week, transmitting memories of the writer first, the scientist second, lubricating skin and hair and timber. Across a marked shovel on a table, the wing is attached, the lost wing that shouts, blueberries need acid soil. Thank you.